Welcome to our second episode of the Pain to Purpose podcast. Today, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming my dear friend, Carly Knopf, life coach, teacher, rebbetzin, wife, mom of four, and last but not least, outstanding holistic healer. Carly, it's a pleasure to have you today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And this is like a real breakthrough for us to end up here.
Absolutely.
All these years later.
All these years later, we're going to tell our story about how we met. And I think today is really like a culmination. It's really like a culmination of our entire journey together. Specifically my journey that you were such a huge part of. And here we are.
Here we are.
Okay, so let's start by just explaining to our audience and telling them a little bit about what you do as a healer.
What I do as a healer is my intention is to help my client heal, but genuinely heal from the depths of their soul to the point that they no longer have the pain. So I really aim to get to the root of the problem as quickly as possible. I get the client to face the root of the problem, which is a real tough one to face yourself. And I always mention that it's important that they know from the start, only the brave heal. You gotta be super brave, super courageous to face yourself, face your past, face your traumas, in order to transform them and to transform yourself into a healed person.
I love that, absolutely. Healing, I always say, healing is not for the faint of heart. It's a warrior's journey.
A hero warrior's journey.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. It's so tough. We have so much available to us in this day and age in our society to just be able to suppress and numb all of the pain or all of the, whatever is supposed to come to the surface. We just have everything available, whether it be Netflix or shopping or alcohol or partying or, whatever it is, work even. Being a workaholic is it's actually even glorified in our society. And it's just another way to numb it, right? Instead of allowing things to come to the surface and be faced.
That's right. And what's amazing about the time that we're in is that everyone's realizing around them that everyone needs to heal. So in the past, maybe our parents' generation, they had to numb it and they had to just run away from it and they had to hush it under the carpet and they couldn't tell anyone and they were embarrassed. And now we've hit a time and a place in society and in the world where everyone's realizing it is the time to heal. And no longer are we hiding and numbing. And those who are numbing are getting caught out by their own peer group saying, what are you doing? Go get help, go get healed. Don't numb it out. So thankfully, our youngsters are waking up to also wanting to be healed and their best selves and not as destructive as maybe our generation or the generation before.
Yeah, totally.
The ones who want it.
Yeah, the ones who want it, who are ready for it. Not everybody has that possibility necessarily. I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, there's like, do you feel like we've spoken about this before? There's like a shift. There's like a grand awakening going on. Like us as healers, we see it in our work, and I feel like maybe it's our perception because that's our reality, but I really feel like worldwide it's happening. People are awakening.
Well, there's a lot of light coming in, I believe, and as healers we're seeing that more and more as weeks go by. It's quite crazy. And what I'm picking up is that people want a more healed world. People want a more peaceful world.
Yeah.
Like, we've done all the death and destruction and the destructive behaviors, and it didn't get the planet exactly where we want it to be. And I think what's happening is that collectively we are wanting more for ourselves, more for our families, for our societies, and for the world at large. And it takes the collective consciousness to bring the world to a higher, more healed place, one human being at a time.
I love that. I love that. 100%. Yeah. So I think we have to tell our story. We have to share. It's wild. So I'll start. Obviously, you can, step in at any time. So Carly and I were, I was 20, you were 18. This is like over 20 years ago. And we both decide, Carly's from England, I'm from Montreal. We both decide to go to Israel for the year and to go to a girls' seminary. For those that don't know, it's a Jewish Orthodox school, boarding school, where you're supposed to go on a spiritual journey, spiritual growth, and we are literally randomly selected to be put in the same room. And the first impression is like, who's this London hippie guitar playing chick that I'm placed with? I come in with my Chanel sunglasses and she's, this cool guitar playing girl.
You are a hippie though. I mean, there is the hippie at heart. So don't pretend it's all about Chanel. You have the soul drive.
100%. People have trouble getting that, is that I'm very spiritual, but I'm also not. I have both sides in me. But anyway, we instantly clicked. Like it was instant, like soul sister connection.
And we had each other 24/7.
24/7.
So it's like, wow, thank you for the random selection.
Yeah. And so we had a wonderful year. And the year ended, you went back to England.
We went to Greece, remember?
Yeah, we did.
We took a trip to Greece.
So fun. You went back to England. I stayed in Israel, got married.
I came to your wedding.
Came to my wedding. And, we each went our separate ways. I moved back to Montreal. You were living in England. We would touch base once in like a few years, once in a blue.
And then we lost touch.
And then we just lost touch until one day you call me. And because Carly is a rebbetzin, she married a rabbi, and you were living in South Africa at the time. Your husband's job was there, and you said, we got offered a position in Montreal. And I said, out of the entire world, you come to Montreal, really?
Well, let me tell you, it was the entire world. My husband said, you want to go to Australia or New Zealand? I'm like, that's a little bit far. You want to go to the States, back to England? Do you want to go to Canada? I'm like, Canada. Nice people in Canada. Pretty little British style, kind of. So literally the globe was ours and Montreal is where we land.
You land in Montreal, and a few months later, like a year later, my life explodes, like everything just shatters. And the first person I call, we have to say that you had already started your own healing journey. You had started training to be a healer
from South Africa. So I already came with a bit of training, and then you come in your collapsed crisis. The worst place I think you've ever been in your life.
Yeah. And I call you, and you're the first person I call, and I'm like, there's a big mess, and I need a cleanup. and it was the first time I had done therapy before, but I had never done holistic healing as you do, and that's when my deep dive healing journey began through you, and that was the beginning of like life changing for me, right? Like that was totally life-changing.
And I came with, just level 1 of my healing.
Yeah.
I studied a few things, but this method is called life alignment. And it really combines the mind, the body, and the spirit, which I believe us human beings are composed of. And you would come to me with my basic knowledge of how to heal or using this method to heal. And you were brave, Aurelie. You didn't really have a choice but to face yourself. And unfortunately, a lot of the time is that there is nowhere else to go sometimes. That's when people become brave, when there is no other choice.
Yeah, like I always say, when it's your time, the universe corners you. Like there's nowhere to go. You have to face it. Like you have to go in, dive deep. And we'll explain what that means. We'll explain, all these concepts to our audience today.
Right. So you did the method, you came.
Yeah.
You worked through it. There were times that I also wasn't sure where this is all going, but I saw the potential and I saw the incredible power within you.
Yeah.
And through clearing the shadows, one by one, that would darken your incredible potential. We work through clearing all this in order for you to blossom and make really, really tough choices and work through those tough choices and then freak out about the tough choices. But the biggest thing I felt with your healing, if you're okay for me to share, is that you were adamant to find your authentic self.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is what kept this whole process of healing going, that you were determined to find your authentic self.
Yeah.
Because you really lost that.
Yeah. I had lost myself completely throughout the years. I was I love to use the word, I was completely out of alignment with my truth. And healing is what removes, like you call, all the shadows, right? All of the limiting beliefs, false perceptions, trauma, societal expectations, community expectations. You peel those layers one by one until you get to that diamond in the middle that is able to shine your light that only you have, right? Like your light is unique to you.
Exactly. And what's so cool about doing this work and shining your diamond and shining your light is there is reward to this, right? It's not like we do all this work and face ourselves and have all this courage and our life stays the same.
Yeah.
When you do this work, and I think that's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah.
That's the candy.
Yeah. 100%.
When we see our clients do the work and they brave it up and they man it up and they process it and embody what we're doing and what we're supporting them in working through things. And then they raise their consciousness level because there's there's 3 different levels of consciousness, if you want me to share that with you.
Ahead.
There's victim consciousness, which you were very much in when we met, and I was as well before my own healing journey, which we're going to get to. So the victim consciousness is when you've suffered something like a trauma and you're stuck there, like, why did this happen to me? I feel bad about myself. Poor me, woe be me.
I'm not worthy.
I'm not good enough. Like nothing's ever going to happen for me. I'm like the bottom. Everyone forgets about me. I'll never be chosen.
Can I just step in for a sec and just let's remind everyone that these are subconscious mechanisms.
Yeah,
we're not aware of them.
No, not aware.
And the healing work is what brings what's hidden in the subconscious. What do we mean by facing it? We bring it to the conscious level.
Exactly.
So that you can then make a choice. Well, do I want to believe that I'm not worthy of this and that? Or do I actually want to believe something else today?
Exactly. So you have to have awareness first. And that's the first part of the healing, is that you have to be aware that you're walking around with this victim consciousness. Because unless people tell you to your face, it's very hidden. And so people, sit there. Some stay there, unfortunately. And it's very, very limiting. And then most people, I would say, don't want to sit as a victim for too long. So then they go into something called survival consciousness, which is where both of us probably were most of our lives.
For sure.
I'm going to survive. I'm going to survive. I got to survive. I got to just...
And can I say, if you're constantly surviving, you can't be living.
You can't be thriving.
You can't be thriving. You can't even be living. So your survival means...
Keeping your head above water and not drowning. So also limiting and doesn't let you really blossom. But it's better than victim, let's be honest. And then up from there, there's something called co-creative consciousness. Now, I never heard of this word before. Maybe it's more popular today, but co-creative consciousness is where you and the creator, so you and the creator who created us, created the world, work together hand in hand in order to better the world, in order to find your purpose. And I believe the deeper the pain that you went through, the higher up you can find yourself once healed.
Yes.
In the co-creative consciousness. And when I talk about the reward, and when we see our clients, moving up this from victim to survivor to co-creator, we then see where the magic just come along in their lives. So it's like miraculous when you heal. And I think about where you were and where we started and how we're both here. We healed, and therefore opportunities start aligning with our healed self, with our higher consciousness, and therefore the higher version of what we want actually happens. Because what happens is that some people are in victim consciousness and they're asking and praying and dreaming about something to manifest in their life, but they can't manifest what they want if they're not aligned in that consciousness. So you can't get to where you want to be unless you do the work and you heal, because as you heal, you rise. And as you rise, the universe then meets you where you've healed.
Where you are.
Where you are.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I love the analogy of it's like there's a shower head, right? And then there's water just flowing down, which is representative of the blessing, abundance, all the good stuff. And when you're misaligned, you're right next to the shower head. So you're receiving like little droplets of blessing, of water, of abundance, of whatever. But the more you heal, the more you're directly under the shower head and receiving all of that blessing, all of that abundance, all of that water fully.
Fully. And it's very interesting that you mentioned a waterfall. Again, we're speaking about this because we're trying to get the audience to understand what it means to be healed and what it means to be co-creative. So just to add on to what you're saying, the classic thing people hear is that, do you see your life or the world as the cup half empty or cup half full? And those who see the cup half empty, they're always trying to fill their cup, and they see people with a cup half full and they want to kind of take some of their water, or only if I could have a bigger house and a better car, and I could fill my cup a bit more, then I'll feel better about myself. But at the end of the day, I don't like this cup analogy because it's limited. You know me, we like to live in the limitless. So we move the cups away, and when you find your true authentic self and when you find your healed self, you do have a waterfall inside of you. You have an ever-flowing waterfall. There is no beginning or no end, and there's nothing driving it. It's just the creators. The waterfalls just keep going from when time began till time ends. There's no start-stop with a waterfall, right? So we all have that within us. It's just a matter of accessing it. So it's not that I'm lucky, you're lucky, or this person's lucky. Everyone healed will get the blessings exactly intended for them. It's just, I think the Creator is waiting for us to access our waterfall.
100%.
So everyone, when they come to me, and sometimes the worse the case, the more excited I am for their healing journey, because I see them as already healed, even though we're going to
see the potential.
Right, I see where they're at, but the darker, the more damaged, the more problematic, the more intense they come to me, the more I know that once healed, they will fly up the consciousness ladder. So if I find them at -500 in the dark, then automatically they can, through work and healing, they can rise to +500, which is a very high level to be on. And then it goes 501, 502. So the magic of finding that diamond after all the muck and the drilling and the going down the coal mine and, everything, all that darkness is magical. And everyone has it. That's the best part. It's not like one person can heal and one person can't.
Right.
In the work that we're in, everyone can heal.
If they're called.
if they're called and if
They
they
choose.
Yeah. And if they allow themselves to receive.
Yeah,
That's another
100%. Yeah, 100%. I love that. Great. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how you, decided to be a healer. What was your journey? This podcast is called Pain to Purpose.
The purpose.
So let's talk about
Right.
your journey.
Okay, so we'll start with pain and then we'll
Yeah.
come to purpose. So pain, I can tell you now, did not start just with me and the beginning of my life, but started with generations before me. And because we don't have all day, we'll start with a deep pain of my grandmother from Greece, from Salonika, who was rounded up and taken to Auschwitz concentration camp. I think it was the labor camp at 14 years old. She was young, healthy and fit. She would be helping in the gardens there. And what kept her alive, obviously she would be killed if she was caught, that she would eat like some of the roots while she's plucking them and picking them. So that helped her survive, even though by the time I think it was the Americans found them, she'd already been there like good over a year. So she was really at the end of life, emaciated and all the rest of it. And she would tell me, I'm getting like chills as I talk about this, she would tell me that God saved her. And yeah, that's something that she really instilled, I think, in my mum, the existence of God, the spiritual side of life. And that pain affected her deeply. 11 members of her family were killed. She was the only survivor from the camp. And then her brother and her third cousin were hidden in the mountains. And then when she was told by the Americans, do you want to go to Israel or back to Athens? She said, I want to go back to Athens. I want to find my brother and my third cousin. And this third cousin is actually someone she admired. He was older than her. And in the end, they got married, my grandmother and the third cousin. But tragedy hits again. It's just the saddest story when I say this. He was killed in a car accident when my mother was 3 years old. So the immense pain that my grandmother held was immense. And my mom held my grandmother's pain because generationally we pass on pain. And my mother's pain of being orphaned at such a young age. So a lot of pain was already in my system before I was even born. Okay, so in utero. And then my mother in her own marriage and in her own circumstances was going through a tough time with my father. So little fetus me growing in the embryo fetus utero is already absorbing a lot of pain. So I come out. Thankfully, I was given a bubbly personality, extrovert, joyful in my nature, which is very helpful. But I was definitely carrying pain. Now,
So I just let's talk about that for a second. So generational trauma, first of all, today at this point, it's scientifically proven that we carry
cellular memory,
trauma, cellular memory in our cells, in our DNA. We carry generational trauma from our family lineage, our ancestry. And then and this is important that people understand that, is that what usually happens is that in our own childhood, in our own life, there will be circumstances or events that will bring to the surface those exact wounds. So it's not only like, okay, it's my mom's stuff, grandma's stuff. It's that, so mom experienced abandonment at 3 years old, or not abandonment, but that's how a child will interpret a parent passing.
Right.
Is, I've been abandoned by I'm fatherless. And then you will experience some circumstance, some event in your childhood that will bring up the wound of abandonment as well, so that you can heal that wound within you and heal the generations before you.
Right. And they do say, I'm not sure where the quote for this is, but I have heard that when you heal, you're healing 2 generations back and 4 generations ahead. So when you heal the cells and the trauma cells that you hold and the pain cells and all the junk basically that we inherit, when we clear that within ourselves, we are energetically clearing it from our children and their children, and then it doesn't get passed down. So therefore, we at least give them more of a chance to live a thriving co-creative life, because we're not having to give them all this heaviness of all this lineage that we're holding. But we didn't know that, as in the next generations are lucky. We were the ones that are carrying all that trauma, and anyone who's kind of our age or maybe a bit younger and older, it's really for us to heal. Like, we must heal so that we don't pass this on and our children don't pass this on.
And I think you remember me telling you, like, I want to do this work so that my kids don't have to do this work.
Right.
And I'll do what it takes, and I'll, go through the
pain.
The pain,
the bravery.
and all of it. Like, I'll be that warrior, because I don't want them to do. They'll have their own journey, their own healing journey. They'll have their own wounds to heal. But let me at least clean up, the previous
as much as you can.
Baggage. Yeah.
And I tell people, and it's interesting because I see it with my clients, is that if as a mother you don't heal what needed to be done in your marriage, or in the way you were raised, or in the way that you dealt with your parents, your kids and the next generation get it worse. So whatever you didn't deal with, whatever you didn't heal from, snowball major. And I'm going to share now, I came from dysfunction, and when I got married, I made it an absolute conscious decision that this trauma and all this dysfunction stops with me. Like, I refuse to bring this into my life, and I will do my every effort to heal. So my healing journey started, I guess, when I got married, because then I realized my heart was like opened, and then it all came flooding out, because I seemed to the world to be very confident and very accomplished, but internally I was very wounded. And I've been 16 years now healing, and I've got to a point, thank God, that I am strong and able, and my consciousness is at a level that I'm able to heal others.
Beautiful. And it's important to mention that, like, it's not like a peak of the mountain healing. Like, I am healed. Like, I have clients that are like, how long will this take? When will I be healed? And I'm like, it's a journey. There's so many layers. It's ongoing. And and the most important part, happiness. This is what I've learned in my journey. Happiness and inner peace actually comes from the journey, not from the destination. I think as human beings, we are built in a way, people look for happiness in all sorts of places, but I think we don't realize that we're built in a way that growth is what brings a human being the most happiness and the most inner peace. Like, in that process, in that journey.
Yeah, and the two biggest joys in the soul of a person is to have serenity in the soul, so peace in the soul, and inner joy. So not based on anything outside. Those are the highest levels.
Yeah.
And that was my kind of goal. I wanted to find that, because I definitely didn't have peace in my soul, and I didn't find the joy within me growing up. And now as an adult, I can access that much more, even though some days can be challenging or life doesn't always work out how you want. I'm generally in a state of joy and peace and love. I have a lot of love for every human being walking this earth, and I really see everyone's greatness.
So I love this. Like, we are born, people need to know this.
They do.
We are born naturally with joy, love, happiness, self-worth. These are our intrinsic birthrights.
That's right.
And then life happens, and all of the wounds and all of the trauma and all of the limiting beliefs come and sort of dim that light.
Well, the shadows, I was speaking about.
Exactly.
And make you feel worthless and not valued and not valuable.
Yeah.
And
it's really about going back to our original state.
Exactly. And the joke of all of this, I mean, it's not a joke, but what's laughable is that the ones that feel the most broken and the most worthless and the most undervalued and the most disastrous, I'm not good enough, are actually the most amazing people in their true essence. It's just their minds and their thoughts and their circumstances gave them the opposite feeling. So I'm happy to share a bit about that if you want.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was talking about the pain that I was inherited with this Holocaust, and we're talking about pain to purpose. So one purpose that came through quite young at 17 was when I was standing by my Danik in these concentration camps. I said to myself,
So let's just clarify, you went on a trip to visit the concentration camps in
Poland for the first time with a school trip. And it's the first time all the stories of my grandmother is like reality, right? So it's very traumatic, obviously, because I'm part of this history, firsthand through my grandmother's lineage. And I stood there at the end of this trip and I said, wow, one man caused so much evil and destruction. I had this yearning fire in me to say to myself, I am one person, but if one person can cause so much evil and destruction, one person can also create so much healing and peace.
I love that.
So that was like the first, I am not just being a somebody in the corner. I have a purpose and I want to do good and spread joy and healing because one person is a very powerful entity.
Yeah. It's interesting because I also went on March of the Living on that trip. And out of all the camps that we visited, my Danik was to me the most
horrifying.
Yeah, but my awakening happened then.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So that was one purpose. Now, if you want to understand a bit more of my healing and all that. So I was raised, 2.4 children, Jewish family. My father had a pretty public job. He was a kosher caterer, so appearances were pretty important. And how do I put this? When you're raised in a family that appearances are very important, you have to hold up to the appearances. You can't break that silence. You can't break that silent code of, making out that everything is just dandy. It's a silent code, right? And, as I'm growing up, obviously 0 to 8, I'm pretty dandy and I'm not really conscious. And then around 8, I'm really picking up things, again, consciously, not so much. I don't really understand at 8 years old, but I'm feeling things are not going so well. And I start feeling not great. I think in school also, I'm not really focusing. I know I'm smart. I know I understand a lot, but I think grade 4 or 5, the focusing, the trouble, academically, why is she so bright? Why is she not, accomplishing? And I just remember in that parent-teacher interview when my teacher was telling me that I'm not accomplishing, I just cried. But I wasn't really just crying about the fact that I wasn't accomplishing. I was guessing I was crying about what was going on behind the perfect image. And it was all kind of coming out, but I had no words to express or no one I felt like I could talk to because I didn't really understand it. So I was busy absorbing, I guess, shadows, right? So my parents were having challenges, and my dad was a personality where he would overdo things. So it started, I think, with working really hard, and he talked about workaholic. So I guess it kind of started with the workaholic, and unfortunately when workaholics need to keep going, they start finding ways to escape, or they start finding maybe outside sources to help make them feel strengthened in themselves. So my dad's outlet started off pretty innocent, and he himself can share the story. He's open about it. But things got worse over time, and he ended up having an alcohol addiction. So obviously as a child of this, I had no idea. I don't know what alcohol is, right? So I don't know what this is. So I'm just noticing that things are not quite right. And I'm feeling I'm feeling bad about myself, not knowing why, maybe school and home. And it's like my shutters of myself, started to shut down. So I told you I was born very vibrant and joyful. And, like a shop shutter, like slowly the shop started to close. Until
it's like
my
you
bulb
dim your light.
dimmed my light.
Dim your light, yeah.
Yeah, until I was really internally shut and trying to survive, right? Again, I'm not expressing this to anyone, just trying to survive. And alongside that, I'm noticing that I'm not the same as other peers. So I'm noticing I think differently. My schooling is not really fitting with the way my brain thinks. And I started also noticing that I was like picking up energy. I was understanding things deeply, almost a little bit like a psychic ability. And as I'm growing older, my home life is pretty awful. So I'm trying to like at least fit into my school life. And this ability of mine of being able to understand people deeply was kind of getting in the way. And they started calling me a hippie. And you can't be a hippie when you're like popular and like wanting to be invited to parties, right? You can't be a hippie. So I had to like scrap the psychicness. And I remember it was kind of my lifeline, actually, just going back to from a young age when this chaos was happening. I had no one to reach out to apart from what I called God. Not that I knew what that concept was, but I was holding on to something spiritual. I think I said the Shema before bed. I learned how
Me
to.
too.
Look at that, from like very young. That was like my 5 years
every
old.
night.
Every night.
Like if I had a crush on a boy, I'd be like, please God, make him like me. That was my...
I was like, just save me, just protect me, please, from this chaos going on around me. So I reached out from God for it. So this spiritual lifeline I was in touch with, and then the psychic is a spiritual lifetime I was in touch with. And then as my home life was getting more dysfunctional, I made a conscious choice to switch off this kind of spiritual psychic lifeline. And that made me worse. So that really locked my shutter door. So then I was like, okay, shop's closed. And then I went on a quest to figure out life, because I'm guessing I dropped into a bit of a depression probably around 12, 13. No one was getting me. I wasn't getting life. No one was there to support me. I'm by myself. I'm all alone. I'm neglected. This is my perception.
I mean, if you allow me to share.
Sure.
And we'll edit it out if it's too private. But I remember you telling me that at 13 years old, you were the one food shopping for the home.
Yeah. So as I said, when we're dealing with addiction, it's chaos, right? So what happens is that anyone married or in a relationship with an addict is often something called codependent.
Yeah.
And the codependent is hiding their own pain through the addiction of the other person.
Because if you're busy focusing on their problem, you can't be looking at your own.
Right. So it's all about the addict. It's all about the addict. And then it's almost also about covering up the addict. Because don't forget, we had a silent code of covering up and making sure no one knows anything. So there was a lot of enabling, and addiction and codependency is like a classic.
Yeah.
I'm sure if any of our listeners want to understand it, there's plenty on YouTube and a ton.
And it's interesting. I remember I did a ton of research on codependency, and actually the word codependent was created referring to people that were in a relationship with addicts. That's how the word was created. And then, nowadays codependents are not necessarily in a relationship with an addict, but it is an addictive relationship. But
addictive relationship, and it's interesting, and I hope my parents don't mind me sharing, is that I realized that when my father actually recovered, which is like a miracle, and I thank my darling husband for intervening and getting intervention to sort that out. So kudos to the husband for saving my father's life. Thank you, Anthony. When he recovered, and they actually did separate eventually. They have a good relationship now, thank God, but it wasn't right for them to stay together. And I realized that I was like, wow, my mom is like an addict. She's like an alcoholic. but without the alcohol.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like I thought my mum was like innocent about all this. And she was just always helping my dad.
Yeah.
But actually, my dad recovered and I realized that my mum was the alcoholic without the alcohol.
So the codependence drug of choice is the relationship, is attachment. I don't want to call it love. Some people say it's love, but that's not what love is.
Yeah.
I'll call it attachment. That's the codependence drug of choice. It's like, I'll die if you leave me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was all very interesting. And so I switched off my spiritual gift and I'm just trying to survive now. So 13, 14, 15, 16, like I'm kind of like collapsing internally, but I am such a masker that like no one could tell. So I was like in the school play as the main part. I was in the teams, the sports teams. So my school had absolutely no idea that I'm absolutely suffering at home because I'm a big high achiever. So I'm just achieving and achieving and achieving until around like 17 where like my brain was like fried and I couldn't focus. And I'm guessing like there was ADHD there, but wasn't diagnosed obviously back in the day.
Yeah.
So I, didn't feel good enough and even though I knew I was smart, I couldn't understand why I'm not achieving and why I can't sit and study in textbooks. Anyway, all this to say, I left my childhood, unfortunately, and I love my parents. Maybe I've told them this because this is part of my journey. That's why when I share these stories, it's not about blaming my parents.
100%.
I love my parents. I have a good relationship with both of them. I've forgiven them. I come with understanding, forgiveness, acceptance, and love, which I think are like the four major parts to trauma. If you can get through those four, I'll say them again for the audience. Understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, and love.
Yeah.
Once you can get to that, especially for people that have abused you or treated you badly or created traumatic experiences for you, when you get to that level, you can definitely find that more peaceful place you were talking about. And so I left my childhood feeling worthless and with no value and not good enough. And that was like a big hole in my heart. And that pushed me to survive harder. So it definitely like gave me like fire in my belly to like achieve, like I was a big achiever.
So I want to step in for a second, and people need to understand this. And it's not to make people feel bad or blame, but our trauma and our wounds, as long as we hold on to them, it's because they have benefited us in some way. So you just gave the perfect example. Your motor was your not good enoughness. So I'm not good enough. I'm going to prove to the world that I am.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like it is holding on to that is giving you a lot of motivation and to go somewhere.
Totally. And
but what people need to understand is that you don't need to hold on to them to get to where you need to be.
Exactly. And I must tell you, and this is another part of the story of my healing, of my coach Val, who I work with today. She's like, wow, I've never seen such a warrior survivor. She's like, you're like a she-man, like He-Man and She-Man, right? With like the armor. She's like, you have an armor on you. I've never seen such an armor. You are like trudging the trenches. You're like fighting the evil. She's like, it's a lot of effort. And I'm like, it's so much effort.
It's so heavy.
Like I'm exhausted by being such a warrior. So when you're fueled by the wound, it is hard work. Like it's
exhausting.
It's effort. Effort. And when she turned around to me and said, life is much more effortless than you think. And I'm like, effortless? There's no effortless in my life, right? Everything is like freaking...
Everything's hard.
Climbing a mountain. Everything is climbing a mountain. What are you talking about? Effortless. Things just come. Opportunities just come. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So before I met her, I got married to my darling husband, who was a rabbi. So I masked pretty well, huh?
That's what you learned. Yeah.
So that's the funny part, is that like, when he came into my life, I'm like, gosh, like, he's 5 years older than me. He went to Cambridge, like all these accomplishments. He has smicha, he's a rabbi. He has, a beautiful heart. He's so interesting and intelligent. And I was like, I can't believe that like he's going to choose me and like, you know, he's going to propose and all these cool things. And I masked my way up until my marriage, until I got married and I fell apart. So there was nowhere to hide. And thankfully for my husband, he didn't run away. I was such a mess.
I mean, we all have baggage.
Right. But I think when I got married, I actually felt like safe. So I was out of the unsafe and into the safe. And we know with PTSD, it's when we feel safe that we
can heal.
That we fall apart first, and then we need to heal.
Because you're not in survival anymore.
Right, exactly.
So you're able to feel the emotions instead of, you know, them being suppressed, and then address them.
Right. So he like took me to someone, a regular psychologist, and said, I think you need some help. And that really started me on a journey of actually asking for help, because when you're on a warrior, survivor, leadership personality, the last thing you think about is asking for help. You're always helping and worrying and trenching the trenches. So I started this healing journey because as a leader, right, I'm in a position of leadership. You can't be wounded. I mean, there are many wounded leaders, but I believe the best leadership is a healed leader, right? So when you're healed...
Let's say a leader that's on their healing journey.
Right, exactly. No one's ever healed. So I realized that if I want to be of impact to others, I have to heal myself first. Yes. That was like a real, like, from pain to purpose. I'm like, I gotta heal this pain fast. Not that it's fast. Because I can't be of impact and inspiration with wounds. I mean, people do, but it catches up with them. So that's where I went.
Energy doesn't lie, people feel it.
Exactly. So I went on this healing journey, started off in London, and then I ended up in South Africa, where I met this lady called Val Toledo on the beach, because I'm looking for other Jewish mums and kids to join my programs. And we made friends, and she introduced me to her book called The Upward Spiral. And it was very similar to what I've been learning, and we really aligned. And she really started to wake my soul up and told me about the victim consciousness, the survival consciousness, and the co-creative on her couch. I was like, I want to be in co-creative. I want to be in co-creative. She's like, you'll get there. It's a process. I'm like, nah, maybe it happened to you, but I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. But that's all I want. But I don't think I'm like I think I'm a bit of a lost cause. Like I really felt like I don't know where I was. I don't know who I was. I was lost. I was wounded. I was in pain. And I just didn't think I'd ever get out of it. I didn't think my life would work out. I didn't really have hope. And I think this is really important to mention, and our listeners can really take this in, because I believe everyone is a healer and everyone can heal. So it's not just the few, everyone can have healing ability. So she was the first person in my life, every single person, like not even parents, teachers, no one, that truly believed in me. Like 100% believed in me without a doubt. And just knowing that someone really believes in you is such a remedy for success and such a remedy for that person to step into their potential.
100%.
Like, it's really incredible.
You hear stories of people that come from like such abusive backgrounds, you know, the worst of the worst. And they say, there was one teacher when I was 10 years old, Mrs. Smith, and she believed in me. And that's how I got to where I got today. And they're, you know, whatever the success story, millionaire, whatever it is. Totally. And it's just that one person that believed in you.
And the craziest part is that she believed in me more than I even believed in myself. Of course, right? Yeah. So like, I'm here not believing in myself at all. And there's this lady believing in me more than I believe in myself. So when someone opens that path of helping you believe in yourself, that's when you empower the person to take those steps to heal. So this started my journey of truly healing. And she sent me to another lady that introduced me to this life alignment. And that was very profound. And I really felt like a shift, like, well, the shadows, some shadows, I actually felt them leave. And I'm like, wow, what is this? And I got to speak to the head of Life Alignment. His name's Jeff Levine, very nice man. He's also Jewish. He's also a Levi. Both my parents are Levis, so I felt like a connection to him. And I've been doing that, and I kind of got to a place where I'm like, you know what? I think I want to study this. I think I want to bring my ability, and Val's the one that reawakened my natural ability of psychicness and healing. And she sent me to this lady, and then I started this course. And then a few years later, here I am in Montreal, trying these funky methods out with my beautiful friend from 20 years ago, Aurelie, her dad.
Yes.
So
here we are.
Pretty cool.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So I want to ask you a question. And I'm probably going to ask this question to all of my guests, and it's a tough one. You went through a lot of pain and challenges, and it brought you to where you are today. If you had the option of going back in time, would you change any of it?
So everything I went through was for a purpose. So no, I wouldn't change anything, but do I want to make the change for the future? Absolutely.
Of course.
So just a small example of that. So my brain wiring is a certain way where I see things panoramically. I don't know if you can understand that. Or circular. So I see the whole picture. And the school system that unfortunately kind of still is very linear. It's very straight thinking. And I used to beat myself up. Like, why can't I just think along a line? Why do I have to always think like this? I'm always thinking like this, circular.
Out of the box.
Out of the box all the time. I never see things as at face value. I'm always asking, like, where does this come from? Where's the connections? So my brain's like totally thinking in a different way. And I used to beat myself up about that all the time. And I used to, like, honestly just never feel good enough. Like, I'm just dumb. Like, I just don't get it. I don't get why I have to memorize this stupidity when I am so much more interested in this, for example, whatever this is. And it's crazy because now that whole beating myself up is my absolute gift in my healing. So the one trait that I was like bashing myself over is my superpower. Is that not crazy?
It's incredible. 100%.
Like, when I do these healings, like, you can tell me your life story, and very quickly I'll be able to, like, join the dots and tell you, okay, well, I guess your pattern that you're suffering from is this one sentence. And they're like, no, it's not possible. How are you able to do that? So it just shows that when you have a pain, you have the same amount of purpose coming from that pain. So back to your question, would I change anything? I guess I had to go through all that pain and trauma and neglect and all the rest of it in order to, listen to this one, right? So I came out of this feeling worthless and with no value. And what is my purpose from that pain is to see how much worth and value I have. Now, if I was just given worth and value, I would not seek to find and heal and find for myself my worth and value. So this traumatic childhood, if you want to call it like that, my parents did love me, which I'm telling you, just the fact I knew they loved me was like a huge part of why I think I've healed so well, because that's a huge part. But this pain and this trauma and this feeling of worthlessness and no value has forced me to go, like, all the way in actually seeing that I have immense worth and immense value. And I can tell you, just this year, like, I'm 39, turning 40 in January 27th. It's the first time I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually have tremendous value, tremendous worth, and tremendous purpose.
So, share with us a the biggest lesson for you throughout this journey? What lesson, advice do you have for our listeners?
The biggest lesson, I think, is that your deepest pain is your deepest purpose, right? So whatever you've gone through and suffered from, if you transform that and transmute the darkness and allow yourself to heal and bring yourself to the light, you are going to be way further ahead than if you didn't experience that pain.
Yeah.
I'm hoping as the generations go by, they are just born into co-creative consciousness, so they don't have to go through pain and suffering to get to the co-creative consciousness. But yeah, your biggest pain is your biggest purpose.
Yeah.
So for me, let's say the school system, my biggest pain was that the school system did not fit with my brain. And one of my big purposes is to allow children like myself, or even more neurodivergent who think differently, to not feel bad about themselves and to be thriving in an environment that works with the way that they think and the way that they learn. So I'm very passionate about that. And I wouldn't be passionate about that as one of my purposes if I didn't suffer the school system with a brain that didn't coincide with the way we're taught.
Totally. I have, one of my kids is, as you know, highly ADHD. I don't like labels, but just for the sake of people, to shorten the conversation. And he thinks he's a brilliant child and he thinks totally out of the box.
But he feels terrible about himself.
Feels terrible. And I always tell him, he struggled with school and stuff and still struggling. And I always tell him, you're not the problem. The school system that is the same as it was 100 years ago never has been, has it not been adapted yet is the problem. It's just not adapted. Like a child is not meant to be sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day, regurgitating information, needing to raise his hand to move or go to the bathroom. A child is meant to move, to explore, to discover, to play, to jump, to be in nature. That's what a child is meant to be. And unfortunately, our school system, I'm sorry to say, it's failed.
You know what's interesting about that? So I also tell my clients who suffered, the system failed you, you didn't fail the system. But what's interesting is that the new kids coming through now, they actually don't stand for it. So me, I was silent about the fact that I was suffering, but I never thought I could speak about it or say anything. Well, anyone who's kind of 12 and down or 14 and down, they're just going to refuse to be part of the system. So there is movement in this area. So pain, your biggest pain is your biggest purpose. That's a big lesson. Also, everyone is here to go through their journey. So like I said, I don't blame my parents. I used to because I was in a victim consciousness. But now that I'm in a higher consciousness, I'm just this is the journey I was meant to go on. I was meant to be a Holocaust survivor's grandchild. I was meant to have this dysfunction in my home. I was meant to suffer in this way. I was meant to, this is what the cards I was dealt. And I don't blame, I don't want it to change, but my free will choice, and everyone listening's free will choice is, okay, so what are you going to do about that? Right? You were sexually abused. So what are you going to do about that? Okay.
It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
Right. So if something has happened to you that is traumatic or difficult or dark, take that and make it your purpose.
I love that. And your challenges are custom made for your soul, where it's exactly what you needed to go through to bring out of you, if you do the healing work, the inner work, to bring out of you exactly your purpose. Exactly your purpose.
And I can tell you, I have addicts call me in their 11th hour, often on the suicidal part of life. And I have such empathy for these addicts because I know with my dad, his whole addiction came from lack of attachment with mother, came from his deep wounding, came from his probably ADHD brain, wanting to escape and needing like impulsivity control, or lack of control of impulsivity. So I have such tremendous empathy, and I think it's the empathy I have and the absolute belief that they can recover, and belief that their soul has a purpose, that I thank God I have a pretty good reputation in bringing them back to their true selves. And I don't think I would ever have the amount of empathy and also care for the fact that their children are suffering, their spouses are suffering, their parents are suffering, because I was the suffering one. And I know that once they recover and heal, the whole family heals. So, you know, once my dad recovered and things became more functional and my parents came to a place of peace within themselves and with each other, that gave us permission to all heal. So it's through our experiences that we can empathize and create connections to those who have also had difficult times in life. And going back to humanity and the collective, we are not here to suffer alone, which I'm guessing in our childhoods we believe that we are here to suffer alone. And many people who are listening think they need to sit and suffer alone. Well, let me tell those listeners that suffering alone is not the way it should be. We are all part of a collective, and part of the responsibility of being a healer is that anytime we heal, we don't just heal the person, we heal all the people that the person's connected to. 100%. That could be like hundreds of people.
Yeah, 100%. So, like when I always say, when you heal, you shift your energy, right? You're releasing anger and sadness and grief and guilt and shame and whatever. You're releasing all of those energies out of you. So you're shifting internally. And when your energy shifts, the people closest to you, so your spouse, your children, your parents, chances are, or you're giving them an opportunity to heal and shift as well.
That's right.
And I've seen this in my own life, where I would have like a major healing session, and then my mom would call me and say, and I'd be like, where did that come from?
Totally.
Without her even knowing that I had done, a healing or whatever.
And apart from addicts, I often get quite a few clients that are struggling in their marriages. And I know that this is an expert on relationships, everyone listening. So
well, pain to purpose.
Right, so relationships or personality disorders, this is the lady to go to. So when I talk about relationships, I don't do this couple therapy thing. I don't work with the husband.
You send them my way.
She sometimes deals with the women, I deal with the men, or both. And I tell them, you can heal your marriage just from healing yourself 100%. And your wounds. So let's leave bashing the wife. Let's leave how annoying she is, how this, how that, her wounds. Let's put that to the side and let's just work on your wounds. And I'm telling you, and you can vouch for me, that when even just the one spouse decides to do the work and shift energetically up the spiral, my coach Val would say either the spouse is going to meet them or they're going to fall away.
Yeah.
So often they meet them, which is great because then the couple's rising, the family's rising. Or if they have to part ways, they part ways, but
peacefully.
But interestingly, the ones that have parted ways knew they married the wrong person. It's very interesting. The ones that have marital difficulties, and I asked them, at your marriage vows, whatever religion they are, did you feel in that moment or that day before that you were marrying the right person? The ones that said yes, in my experience so far, have managed to repair the marriages. The ones that said, no, I don't feel that I should have married this person, they're the ones that often fall away, which is the right thing because they shifted and they came into their truth. So it wasn't the truth to marry that person.
Yeah, but yeah.
I mean, it's more complicated.
Yes, exactly. There's, spiritual, factors that we don't know about.
Right.
But absolutely agree with what you're saying. Couples come to me all the time and they're like, we want to do marriage counseling. And I'm like, no problem. But my rule is I see you both individually. You both do your individual work, your childhood healing, and then you'll see the marriage will get better. And I have turned down very high-paying clients that absolutely wanted to sit in front of me on a couch, bash each other. And I'm like, I'm not going to take your money because you're not going to go anywhere. I'm not doing my job. Like, we're not going to do this, right?
Exactly. And just going back to what you said, it's very interesting with my parents. I know, because again, even if you don't think you married the right person, the fact that you married them is because you were meant to marry them.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to just go back on that point.
Yeah.
So I know 100% that my mother's soul and my father's soul were meant to come together and have me and my sister.
Yeah.
And even if it was just to bring me and my sister into the world through those two souls, I am like very grateful that I came from both of them, and they gave me, my soul came from the union of their souls. And there's many stories, that talk about, certain situations, but those children had to come from that genetic makeup of father and mother, spiritual genetic, physical genetic, whatever it is, for the purpose to come, right? So I believe that, I'm just grateful that I was born from these two parents. Yeah, their marriage didn't work out. Yeah, it was dysfunctional. But they were meant to get married.
Yeah, exactly.
I was meant to be born from them and not a different partner.
100%. 100%. Okay. Well, I thank you for sharing your story, which is such an inspiration. And it's not easy to be so vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage, to share that part of your life. But at the end of the day, it's so powerful because you are going to inspire, just by telling your story, you're going to inspire people to maybe go on their own healing journey, to maybe believe that just because they went through challenges, doesn't mean that they can't be the best version of themselves. So I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I want to thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed, make sure to follow. There's a lot more coming. I'm grateful for your following and your ongoing support.